Okay, welcome everybody to this committee of the whole meeting of Smith Falls Town Council on August 23rd. I am Councillor Jay Brennan, and tonight we have regrets from Councillor Wendy Alfred, and we'll commence with the meeting right now. And I've asked for any amendments to our agenda this evening. Looking around and seeing none. Any disclosure of monetary interest arising from the agenda? Seeing none. Okay, so we have a delegation this evening, and I want to welcome John McAllister, trustee of Ward 4 and chair of the board of the Upper Canada School Board, and Ron Ferguson, director of education and secretary to the board. They're going to give us a presentation regarding concerns and considerations about making rural remote learning permanent in Ontario education. So gentlemen, I want to welcome you both to our council meeting. And the floor is yours. I know you have a slide screen for us, so we look forward to that. So the floor is yours, you guys.
Thank you very much, Chair Brennan, and good afternoon, Your Worship and councillors. I just, as Chair Brennan mentioned, I'm joined today by our newly minted Director of Education, Ron Ferguson, whom many of you probably know well. And I also want to introduce to you Jamie Schooler, who is the trustee for this ward, and he is also online. So if we can go to slide one.
Hey, Jamie.
I think most of you know Jamie. Slide one, please. I would like to share our concerns and considerations regarding the proposed legislation by the Ontario government to make remote learning a permanent part of Ontario's education system, and how this could relate to the sustainability of small rural schools. And almost all of our schools relative to larger urban centers are small. Slide 2, please. We have all in the past 2 years endured a lot in this COVID period, and we have coped reasonably well, and we have learned exponentially. Educators did in 10 months what might have taken 10 years of preparation. Slide 3, please. You may well know that our students learned remotely for one reason, and one reason only, and that was to deliver education when schools were forced to close to keep everyone safe in this pandemic situation. Remote learning was never designed to be a default tool. Rather, with many complications and limitations, it was emergency schooling in a pandemic. And I'm going to skip the next slide, Dave. The ministry proposal was rumored to expand student access to online and remote learning as a permanent part of the publicly funded school system in Ontario. Slide 6. Next one, please. The issue here is whether this proposed legislation by the Ontario government has accounted for the sustainability of small rural schools. Next slide, please. There has been no widespread consultation with school boards, municipalities, and students and parents. Next, please. Allow me to give you a concrete example. Let's take a look at a grade 12 physics class at SFDCI, a school that you all know very well. Let's assume that there are 15 students enrolled, but 5 of them have opted to do it remotely. That leaves 10, which means that this in-person class at SFDCI is no longer viable and probably will not be offered. It's also unclear whether the proposed legislation will result in increased class sizes and reduced funding for school boards. That is our current interpretation. This translates into less opportunity to operate smaller classes and low enrollment in secondary schools, which leads to more remote learning. Next slide, please. Make no mistake, our board is not against functional online learning, which we already do with the Ontario e-learning consortium. This arrangement for online learning is fully compatible with rural, remote, and northern schools and does not impact student enrollment counts for the operation of small schools and is fully funded. So e-learning courses delivered through local schools or collaboratively across a school district when teachers know their students' learning needs is a far superior model of delivery. Next slide, please. So why replicate these technologies and processes and parallel these services? This proposed model puts the entire education system at risk, especially here in the Upper Canada District School Board. Next slide, please. To conclude, my concern that this mode could become a fait accompli without input and comment by our community and our board at large, and impact the sustainability of small rural schools, especially here in Upper Canada. I wanted to bring this to you, to your attention, before the horse escaped from the barn. Ron and I would be pleased to take any questions and further respond to questions regarding our future in September. We are saying, and this has become really an interesting phrase, and it was used with the minister on a call earlier today. We're not going back to school in September. We're going forward. So we are going forward with a great deal of confidence, preparation, and optimism. And before I conclude, I also want to thank your staff, Carrie, Dave, and Nadine, for the excellent support and communication that they have provided to me for this presentation. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is the essence of my concern and consideration. And I would open the floor to questions on this issue or any other issue pertaining to education.
Thanks very much, Chair. So I'll open it up, and I see one hand up is Councillor Dwyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. McAllister, for coming with the presentation. I have to say, I'm still a little bit confused by what it is the province is offering as part of these proposed changes, as opposed to what's presently being offered. I say that because I think that there are some advantages to having the option for remote learning, which it sounds like is something that is already being supported by the school board. And to the best of my knowledge, no one from the provincial level has come right out to say that really they're looking at closing schools at this point, beyond what has already been stated through work in previous years to look at capacity and demand within our rural school boards. So I'm wondering if you can more specifically indicate what it is about the current proposed legislation changes that make it different than what has been our operating standard to date.
Sure, let me try and explain that. And I'll ask Ron to chip in if he.
You're muted, Chair.
Thank you very much. I'll ask Ron to chip in as well. But we currently do offer remote learning through our consortium to which we belong. That is done within the context of our schools, which is perfectly fine, and it's funded. It's not, doesn't detract from any funding that we have now. What is being proposed is something that would be totally exclusive from our schools. It would be totally different, and it means that students would be able to take a course remotely delivered by somebody else completely, and not within the context of our schools. Ron, would you like to add to that?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, folks. It's nice to see some of you again. I have many familiar faces. As John alluded to, I'm a graduate of SFPCI and CHIMO and Montague, and was born and raised in Smith Falls area. So this is a bit of a homecoming, even though it's just virtual. So nice to see all of you. I think one of the things that we're trying to bring to people's attention is that this is the beginning stages, and we perhaps want to make sure that we have the opportunity to shape what this will look like. We don't have the final version of what it might look like. As Chair McAllister mentioned, we do have e-learning, electronic learning right now that occurs in our schools before the pandemic. But with that, what most students do is that they have a certain time in their timetable. They have their face-to-face classes, and then they have a class that they perhaps couldn't get at the school, specialty class that's offered, and then they're able to jump onto their e-learning course and take that. What we've seen here in the pandemic that's different than that was this idea of remote learning, where students are completely detached from the home school and doing their learning somewhere else. And that's what we want to make sure that we have an opportunity to comment on. We want to solicit feedback from you folks about what you'd like to see in your schools. That does have the potential, as John has mentioned, Chair McAllister has mentioned, depending on how it's rolled out, to potentially make it more difficult to offer certain courses if a large number of students opt to take that and don't show up for face-to-face school. So your point is well taken, and I think what we're here to do is raise awareness and perhaps make sure that we have an opportunity to join this conversation before that's fully planned out.
Thank you. And Mr. Chair, perhaps a follow-up, just to summarize what I believe I'm hearing, is that the distinction between what is being contemplated right now, as it differs from what is currently being offered, is that rather than having a homeschool, being a school locally that you would be assigned to as a student, with the option of taking additional supplemental courses that cannot or are not offered at your local school, you would essentially be a student of a e-school that is in no way, shape, or form affiliated with your particular board or homeschool. Is that a reasonable summation?
I believe it is.
That is one thing that could occur, and that's we're not, again, it hasn't been fully formed yet, and we're at this point what we're trying to do is make sure that we with the help of folks like yourselves and with other stakeholders in public education have the opportunity to provide comment on that, what it might look like. But your summary is yes, outline what we would be wanting to look at, and that is a potential that could happen. And so we're hoping to be able to, guide that and provide some input and solicit feedback from folks as well.
Okay, thank you for that, Ron. Mayor Panko, you've got your hand up there.
Sure, thank you, gentlemen. As a father of 3 kids who went through virtual remote learning through the parts of the pandemic, I can understand some of the challenges that it provides, not just for, say, for parents, but for the kids. And from some of my experience and hearing from others, I think, every kid learns differently, but I think there's also the ability to probably hide from time to time with a virtual environment, maybe not be held as accountable. And of course, school is far more than simply what you read in a book or what you experience on a screen. It's the social elements, the opportunity for sports and recreation and interaction with other kids. And so I definitely recognize the merits of virtual learning in situations where a course not offered at your school could be available in that environment. But I do see pitfalls with a broader virtual learning environment. The kids probably are not as accountable, and there are some pitfalls and challenges. At the same time, if that did impact the number of kids attending certain courses, it could end up leading to potentially other courses not being offered because of low enrollment. My deeper concern, I guess, relates to children or students who may have greater needs than other students. And while some kids may do very well in a virtual environment, I think that being imposed on some kids would obviously be deeply concerning, or that becoming the only option makes it more difficult for them to learn than the traditional environments. I'm just looking for maybe some feedback there. And then I guess finally, I know at County Council back in June, Leonard County, it was community services, you were a delegation, and there was a resolution that was passed by county. And I don't know if that's something that you are looking for from other municipalities.
Yeah, exactly. Your worship, you've hit the nail on the head. Remote learning is certainly not for everyone. And I think our experience, our students' experience has proved that. Some kids benefited well, but others did not. And there was a lack of learning, a lack of commitment in some cases not. But I think the impact on the local school is my major concern. Ron, would you like to add further?
Yeah, I just, your worship, you made a excellent point too about our students that perhaps need some additional supports or have some special needs. And where we share your concern, we certainly wouldn't want this to become mandatory. And you also made an excellent point around that school is more than just, the classes that you attend. All of us have been through school. We all know all the advantages, the social opportunities, the clubs, the sports activities. And we certainly seen during this pandemic, when in an emergency we were forced to have everybody learning remotely, that a great deal was lost in as far as those extras that make school enjoyable and build those social connections and lifelong friendships. So those are all the things you highlighted, is why we also want to make sure that this is slowed down and that we have an opportunity to provide input on where things go.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, Councillor Allen, your hand was up and now it's down. Is it still up?
Well, I just, as I listened to Mayor Penko's comments, I was shaking my head. I agree. The only thing I might add too is that I think for me, supporting a motion for consultation with parents and stakeholders is key. Because as you came to talk to us today, I think parents need to be part of the decision making too. As a grandmother teaching kindergarten to my 4-year-old grandson, talk about crazy when it's online. Like I finally just said to the teacher and my son, I'm going off, I'm signing off because he's not getting anything out of this. They just had fun making faces and waving. And so the age is another factor, the grade level. But and the other thing for me as a former teacher is our little schools are important. Our schools that belong to the community are important. Not only do they help the children, but the families that live in the area, and their school becomes a hub where they meet other parents, they have social groups, they plan activities. I just think they need to be part of this whole consultation. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for that. And I know Councillor McKenna had his hand up there. Yep. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess a question is, I was present at the county meeting as one of the representatives there, and the early slides talked about stories emerging in media reports about this potential. Has any new information or anything more concrete come up since the June presentation to now is there anything more concrete that you could point to? Because sometimes government float these trial balloons just to see what the reaction is. It's not unusual. Is there anything more concrete that has happened since then that's causing you to be still at this?
If I could answer Councillor McKenna, I did, as you know, may or may not know, but we have been meeting with the minister on a teleconference weekly every Monday, and we met today again at 1 o'clock or 1:30. Several months ago, I raised this whole issue with the minister, and his response at that time was that it was just a proposal. They were thinking of it, etc., and it was posed to a focus group, and that's sort of where it was left. So no, we have not heard anything further since that time.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? I'll thank you, gentlemen. And John, your cameras was off, but that's okay. We could hear you just fine, and that's okay. And I'm glad to see the local trustee here as well, Jamie. And yeah, I mean, I think your main point here, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is you just want a voice. You want to be your input put in. You know, you realize, and I know that everyone here realizes that really the and education is so important to our communities. However, it's not in our purview. I mean, we're doing roads and sewers. We try to look after the hospital, although that's not really in our. But we realize I would categorize it like our hospitals. I mean, we try to support our hospital as best we can. It's a provincial responsibility, as is education. And you know, I think that the county did a great service in supporting, asking for a voice, and to make sure that the board and our elected representative and Jamie, you know, has input into this. And so I'm happy that you came tonight. So I guess Mayor Panko, you asked, you know, the ask is a similar motion or some sort of support from this council. That's the end game here, probably, for you guys.
Yes, I think that would be satisfactory. That would be most welcome if you could do that. And Chair Brennan, you've really hit the nail on the head, because while education is not necessarily your purview, your community school is. And I think we want to, I'm very pleased, frankly, that we were invited here, because it's important that we keep the lines of communication between the board, which is that big monolithic organization based in Brockville, but it's really not. It's based in each of our communities. And I feel really important about that. And I'm pleased that we can maintain the lines of communication. And if at any time, any one of you wish to communicate with Ron or with Jamie or with me, you are more than welcome to do so.
Mayor Penko?
Yeah, so if I can just, I guess we have a mutual interest in the education of our kids and our community. So I would just ask if we add this as a priority item, whether that possibly later this afternoon or at our next committee of the whole meeting.
Yeah, I agree. I would propose to put it at the next committee of the whole, and then probably we'll do a special council after that. We can agree on an appropriate motion at that time. Everyone's okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay. So thank you, gentlemen, for coming, and don't be a stranger. You can come back anytime to update us on how it's going, especially after September when everybody gets back, and hopefully everything goes good. I'm sure it will. So thank you for coming.
And don't forget, we're not going back to school in September. We're going forward.
That's a good one. Yeah. Great.
Goodbye, everybody. Thank you so much.
Right. Thanks a lot. Good to see you.
Bye-bye.
So we'll add that on to the next committee of the whole, and talk about it at that time. We have no adoption of minutes. I understand we have two director's reports, however, and I'll let the Director of Corporate Services, Carrie Costello, go first.
Thank you. Just a very quick update tonight. Just a reminder to everyone that the school season is fast approaching, as we just heard, and a reminder that we have multiple locations in town where we have crossing guards and our children crossing those streets, Brockville Street and Ross, McGill, Chambers, Queen, Anderson, Brockville, Broadview, and Ross and Percy. For the most part, we have guards there before 9 a.m. And there until a little after 9:30, and you're there again at the dismissal. So probably about from 3:30 to 4:30 on. So just a caution to everybody, to look out for all the little ones crossing the streets. We will be putting out some messaging on social media and website, and all the schools as well have been notified. So just a little reminder.
Mayor Panko has a question.
Yes, thank you, Carrie. I had a concern last week from residents of Chambers Street about school year coming and crossing guards, and wondering the possibility of examining the corner at McGill or Ann. I guess a lot of kids are crossing there. There's concerns about speed on Chambers, and with the school year coming and kids crossing it on a very regular basis, making sure we do all we can to keep them safe.
And that was the McGill and Chambers Street?
Yeah, McGill or Ann, in that area, I think the kids tend to cross at both, I believe.
Okay, we do have one guard at McGill and Chambers Street.
Oh, maybe it's the other, okay. Must be up a block then at Ann, I think. So have a look, I guess, if we can check that out anyway. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for that reminder. Any other questions? So you reminded us that the summer is almost over. Thanks very much. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Sorry.
And I think CO Morris has a report for us as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm here to remind you that construction season is still happening in Smith Falls. And with that said, I'm pleased to advise committee and the broader public that the tender for Beckwith Phase 2 was issued earlier today. It will close on September 22nd, 4 weeks hence. And we have an aggressive timetable. We expect to bring it back to this committee with a recommendation, all things being equal, on October 4th. And that is my report for this evening.
Great. And everyone's enjoying the sidewalk and the intersection at Lombard. So it looks great and the traffic's flowing good too. So thank you for that. That is the end of the reports. There are no correspondence items. We have a little in camera. It won't take long, I don't suspect. So I'll entertain a motion to go in camera. Councillor Allen, seconded by Councillor Dwyer, all in favor. So give us a couple minutes. Shouldn't take long. So welcome back. The Rising report from the in-camera item we had, council discussed a personal issue about an identifiable individual relating to a committee appointment. That will be added on to our meeting tonight as priority issue F as a committee appointment. So we'll hear about that at that time. And we'll move into priority issues. Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program Green Stream Intake Project Selection Report. And that's with CO Morris. So we want to hear about that. So go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the provincial and federal governments have announced the second intake of the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program Green Stream. The first intake was in 2019, and committee may recall we did make an application at the time for the same project as being recommended this evening. There were a few fundamental differences between this intake and the previous one. The previous one was a budget of 200 million. This one is 240 million. The maximum individual grant in the last one was 3 million. It's now capped at 5 million. And most importantly, the previous iteration was somewhat diluted between water, wastewater, and stormwater. So that's a pretty large cache of projects. This one is specifically for potable water. So we think the alignment with our water tower project is particularly good. It fits, it's in our asset management plan. It fits most of the criteria that we've been able to glean from the guideline. And most importantly, the timing works. The projects have to be started no later than September of next year and completed before October 31st of 2026. The province anticipates notifying applicants in the winter of 2021, so later this year. And the federal government intends to notify applicants in the spring of 2022. So that doesn't give a lot of runway between being notified by the federal government and starting the project, but fortunately we have what I would consider a nearly shovel-ready project. So we looked at our asset management plan. We think the only one that purely qualifies for this program is the water tower project. It also is of a magnitude that would allow us to maximize the cap that's being proposed. So that's important. And as I said, the timing works. So our recommendation is to pursue the water tower project as a funding project. The application is due September 9th. In anticipation of this, we've done some work to ready the application. But with your concurrence, we will finish it and submit it before the deadline. So perhaps, Mr. Chair, I'll pause there and ask or answer any questions.
Councillor Dwyer has her hand up.
Nope, I just have my thumb up. Sounds good to me.
Oh, okay, sorry. Thumbs up. Mayor Panko actually has his hand up.
Yeah, thank you. Malcolm, can you comment on where we are at with the detailed design? Is it something we anticipate completed before we even submit the application or shortly thereafter?
Yeah, through the chair. So we have monies in the 2021 capital budget for the detailed design. It has not started owing to a departure of our director, but I'm happy to remind everyone our new director starts September 7th. So we're going to make this a priority to get the detailed design work finished. We did the environmental screening report, so that informs the detailed design, but certainly there's a lot of work to be done, which we expect to complete over the winter. So yeah, it's in the queue and we think the timing will work with the timelines for the funding program.
Thank you. Yeah, so assuming that's all in place, and I guess to use the common phrase of our chair, I think it's probably a no-brainer on this one. The best bang for a buck, obviously, with the amount of capital potentially available here and the priority of this makes sense. So I fully support it.
I think we've got support here. One of the question, I did have one question, Theo, and I'm sort of you know, we're not able to stack the funding from the gas tax fund. So that's all we're getting. And we can't use the other money that we're probably getting anyway for the project that we think is probably the most important.
You're quite right. We can't stack federal funding, but there's no explicit prohibition of stacking provincial funding.
Okay.
So we will leverage that to the extent possible.
Yeah, that's great. And yeah, you've got support for that. The other, I'll just put the notion out there that I think that probably we need to have a discussion in the medium term, probably, about the fate of the water tower that we have. And you know, I know that when eons ago, when the consultant came, we talked about there's no really engineering reason why it has to come down. However, there's maintenance and upkeep for it. So we'll have to have that discussion at some point in the not too distant future.
Yes, that's a very good point. And in fact, it's on our radar to bring that back. We did have a condition assessment completed on the structure. So we'll get expert advice and bring that back.
Okay, great. So that's you've got support. We're gonna apply for that, and that'll come forward in not too long of time in the next in the council meeting tonight. So
correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
The next item is July budget monitoring report with Treasurer Koziel. Hello, Treasurer Koziel.
Hi, good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm here this evening to provide just a high-level update after completing July budget monitoring. As indicated in my report, we are still trending an overall surplus. It has increased since June surplus. We're now looking at about 680,000. The majority of that is in the tax supported to the tune of about 600,000, 39 in water distribution surplus, and the wastewater 43,000. And as noted in the variance report, the majority of that is payroll related expenditures, surpluses or stems from, as well as our shared services to the tune of about 260,000. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have with the documents attached.
Any questions from my colleagues? Nope. There was thumbs up. Oh, Peter McKenna.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know council had requested these routine updates from the treasurer because of COVID. And in particular, we were concerned about the risk of COVID-19 and the impact on the municipality and on our budget. It appears that the risk is being very well managed. My question really is, how is the frequency? Do we want to keep doing these frequent reports? I forget how often you're coming. Is it, or is it time to go back to what we were doing previously?
If I could, through the chair, this is our policy does dictate we start doing budget monitoring after the first half of the year, and then it's monthly. By all means, if council opted not to do it as frequently, but that is what's in our policy.
Okay, thank you. I knew we brought it up earlier because of COVID, but this is routine business. We're back to normal.
That's correct.
Great.
Yeah. Okay. Councillor Dwyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just on the tails of Councillor McKenna's comments, I mean, Janet, is it a lot of work for you to produce this report, or is it just kind of like a reprint of whatever you've already got in the financial system?
No, by all means, this is advantageous to senior staff. It gives them a chance to review their budget. I believe what I have done is to be correct, but by all means, they're more intimate with their subdepartmental budgets. So if there's a chance for an error, then it's corrected. So no, it's a good process to go through.
Okay. The only comment I will make, and I wasn't going to mention it, but now that we're talking about it, I mean, I find, especially as somebody who's not super familiar with the municipal budget process, that you have to be cautious and contemplative about what you are reading. I noticed in particular, the one variance that really jumped out to me was a 30% increase in the IT budget. And then when you look at the variance report, it actually has to do with contract extensions for services, which comparatively seems significant in the scope of the entire budget. It's very insignificant. And then when you contemplate the fact that that contract would have to come for execution at some point and will neutralize itself out in the end of the budget, then contextually it doesn't seem quite as dramatic. But I think it's very easy to get caught in the weeds when you're looking at the financial reports and not understanding kind of what the full life cycle impact of budget planning throughout the year is going to be.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Comments? Thank you for that, Janet. And I do think it's an important function, although it's, you know, I appreciate your comments that it's actually helpful to staff. And it's also helpful for the transparency for the people that are watching tonight. So, and there are many people watching, I'm sure. And so thank you for that. Okay. Second intake. Oh, sorry. Municipal Act request for reduction report with you again, Janet. Sorry about that.
Certainly. So as per the Municipal Act, Section 357, an application can be made to the treasurer to cancel, reduce, or refund part of the taxes levied on land. We had 3 applications received this year for the 2020 taxation year. And so these are attached for your information prior to the tax collector processing them. As you'll note, the details are listed under analysis. So the total impact to the budget's around 10,000, which is well within what we have budgeted in the 2021 budget. So this is for information only.
Yep. Thank you. Any questions, comments? Councillor Dwyer?
Sorry, I know I'm chatty tonight. I won't belabor this.
Okay.
Janet, the building that was demolished to make way for the parking aisle for the post office, do we have any idea long-term what's going to happen to that parcel? I mean, obviously right now it's included as a separate parcel, so it has its own assessment. And while it's not significant, I mean, they are still paying taxes on vacant land for those purposes. But do we know if that's actually how it's going to remain, or if they are merging the property and the assessment will eventually roll over into the post office property? You look confused. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do, but I do not have any information as to how this is going to proceed, to be honest with you.
Okay.
No, it'll just be
Okay.
So
Thanks.
Okay, so we've got that as an information item, and if there's not any other questions, I'll move on to Director Costello for the second intake of the Municipal Modernization Program.
Well, I hope to make your night better, Chair Brennan, since I told you summer's closing up. So this is a good news story. The town was granted funding in the amount of $49,511 to get a software package so that we could dive into the 21st century and begin the process of e-permitting within our building services department. This would allow applicants, as well as our CBO and building inspector, as well as the admin help, to have everything at their fingertips while they're issuing permits or on inspections or just looking up the file. We've also added into that a feature for records retention, where we'd be able to have all of our historical records for properties within this program. And as well linked to our GIS mapping. It is a 75-25 split with the province and the town. The town would use the 25%, we'd use our building reserve. So it's a good news story. We have not received the transfer payment agreement yet. However, I'd like to bring a bylaw forward this evening so that when we do get it, we are in a position to have it signed and executed so we could get this program underway.
Awesome. Any questions? We'll see some thumbs up. I see one. Yep. That's great news.
Thank you.
That's going to really help our customer service. Yeah.
Thank you.
So good one. We'll pass that tonight. Finally, waste management contract extension with CO Morris.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. So the town has a contractual arrangement with Glenview Iron and Metal for a couple of contracts, all related to waste management, and they've been in place since 2015. So we have a contract to collect recyclables and send them to a processor to be sorted and marketed. We have a contract to collect waste and send it for disposal. And then we have a much smaller contract to pick up bins at multi-residential buildings throughout town and a few of the municipal locations as well. So those three contracts actually expired. The original contracts expired at the end of 2020. There was a 1-year extension clause in each of the agreements, and council exercised that clause last year. And that was done because we had very little information about what recycling or the Blue Box program was going to look like in the future. We have more information about what it's going to look like, but not all information. So we're at a point now where we've done a lot of due diligence in terms of understanding what some of our neighbors and also some of our comparator municipalities outside of the Lanark County are doing for waste management. And each is doing something a little bit differently, but the common theme is that everyone is preparing for the transition of the Blue Box program and aligning contracts so that they either expire or there's an opportunity to exit the contract should the producers of packaging take over the service. And that's the big question mark right now. We know the province has passed legislation, they passed the enabling regulation, they've identified the materials to be collected, and they will be a universal list of items across the province of Ontario. And we also have our transition dates. Ours is July 1st, 2023. What we don't know is who's going to deliver the service. And that's, there are a lot of conversations going on right now about how that's going to actually be implemented and delivered at curbside. So we needed a contractual arrangement that provided or made provisions for us to either continue collecting that material through a contract or to exit that contract and hand it over to someone else. So what staff have done is we've been discussing and negotiating with Glenview Iron and Metal for some time. We've reached a consensus on terms. The terms of the agreement would be largely the same as the existing agreements. There would be two fundamental changes. One would be the pricing, and the report I've offered you is outlines the pricing, the new pricing, if council accepts it. And we've also included an exit clause so that if our services through contract are no longer required as of July 1st, 2023, we can get out of that business. So we've looked at our comparators. We think there are two broad options. We can either extend the existing agreement under new financial terms, or we can go back out to the market and put it out for tender. Staff believe that what we're proposing to extend the contracts provides value to the taxpayers of Smiths Falls. It provides consistency in service delivery. It's very comparable with, again, those comparator municipalities we looked at. In fact, the recycling costs are the lowest of our comparators. And overall, if you combine all three contracts, we're still amongst the lowest of what our comparators are paying. And some of our comparators went out to tender, others simply negotiated, much as we're recommending this evening. So on balance, we think this is a good deal. It provides value to the taxpayer, and it gets us through, most importantly, the unknown transition period that's coming upon us. So with that said, we have a couple of options. The recommendation is clear, and that is that we extend, and they would start, the new contract would start January 1st, 2022. So perhaps I'll stop there and field any questions.
Thank you for that. Questions, comments, thumbs? I think that probably the 2 points you made are value and service. And you know, as municipal councilors, we all know garbage collection and snow plowing are big items. And I think you found a good balance there with the uncertainty, and we're going to be, you know, we'll be well served for the next little while until we find out what's going on. So thanks for all the work. And I know Director Dunlop in the past has done a lot of work on that as well. So I think you've got support, and we'll go forward at council unless Councilor McKenna had something to say. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair Brennan. It's almost what had just said. It was just one of the things that makes it easy for us tonight and most nights to put our thumbs up without a lot of discussion is the quality of the reports coming from staff, the details that I just, whether it's finance or other funding opportunities, I just want to again commend staff for the quality of these documents. It's clear. It makes our job much easier, and I hope the public who have the time and can take the time to read these through in detail. There's a lot of really good information in them. So I just wanted to get that in too. Thank you.
Yeah, well said. Okay, so you've got approval here. We'll bring that forward at the council meeting upcoming. And at this point, I'll entertain a motion that the committee adjourn its proceedings at 5:52 and stand so adjourned until the next duly called committee meeting. All in favor? Oh, sorry. Oh, I've got one more. I added an item. Yeah. Sorry.
There's that. There's also just a correction. This item will appear on the next council agenda on the 7th. But I may have misled you on the previous one about the green stream funding. It's on tonight's council.
Tonight.
Yes.
Okay, agreed. So I messed up again. Item F is Director Costello. We had an in-camera discussion about a committee appointment, and we'll bring that forward at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With council's concurrence, I'd like to bring forward a resolution this evening to officially appoint Kristen Storms. She's the owner of the Witchcraft on Russell Street to the Downtown Business Association Board of Management.
Okay. We have concurrence. I think we have concurrence, and that will come forward this evening.
This evening, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
So now the motion that I was so anxious to do. The committee adjourned its proceedings now at 5:54 and stands so adjourned until the next duly called committee meeting. All in favor? So we'll give staff about 4 minutes.
Welcome back to the special meeting of Smith Falls Town Council for Monday, August 23rd. We have regrets tonight from Councillor Alford. I'll ask for disclosure of monetary interest. I see none. I was just going to go back to announcements. We had one miscellaneous motion prior to our committee of the whole meeting. That is 8.1, the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program. We've added item 8.2 from committee of the whole, which is the appointment to our DBA. So moving ahead, with no delegations, there's no adoption of minutes. I assume we have no reports this evening. Seems correct. We have one bylaw, which is with Councillor McKenna, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Dwyer, that a bylaw to authorize execution of a transfer payment agreement with the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing respecting the Municipal Modernization Program funding be received and read a first time and taken as read a second time.
Thank you. It's moved by Councillor McKenna, second by Councillor Dwyer. The bylaw to authorize execution of a transfer payment agreement with the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing respecting the Municipal Modernization Program, in brackets MMP funding, be received, read the first time and taken as read a second time. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Discussion. Councillor McKenna.
Yes, Your Worship. The staff have successfully reached an agreement with the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, and this bylaw would formalize that agreement. It's a funding agreement, modernization funding in the tune of around $49,000, which would modernize and update our building officials' processes. So right now it's a paper exercise where people applying for permits, etc., have to come in or have to get their hands on them, fill out the documentation, submit it. So this would digitize a lot of that process, thereby providing better customer services to the public, and in the end, making a much more efficient system out of this. So we appreciate the provincial government's modernization funding to make this happen.
Great, thank you. Any further discussion? May I have the third reading, please?
Again, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Dwyer, that a bylaw to authorize execution of a transfer payment agreement with the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing respecting the Municipal Modernization Program funding be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered bylaw 10253-2021.
Great, thank you. Moved by Councillor McKenna, second by Councillor Dwyer, that a bylaw to authorize execution of a transfer payment agreement with the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing respecting the Municipal Modernization Program funding be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered bylaw 10253-2021. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Councillor Allen, you have the first motion.
Yes, Your Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McGuire, Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program Green Stream Intake 2021. That Council of the Corporation of the Town of Smith Falls approve the water tower construction project as a priority for funding under the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program Green Stream Intake 2021, and that Council authorize the CAO to submit an application for funding for all eligible works to a maximum of $5 million.
Great, thank you. Discussion, Councillor Allen?
Yes, this was the the new water tower. We've been discussing it for a number of, well, it seems like a very long time. And it's something that we will need as we move forward. And it was really the only priority item that fit this eligibility for this money. And it will mean that the funding that we're getting is $5 million from the federal provincial grants, but the balance is $3.5 million that will be our municipality over the cost of 3 years. So it's something we need, and it's a good investment, and we're so happy that we have that grant to help us.
Oh, yeah. And just to clarify the opportunity for the grant, we'll have to wait for approval. So
yes, well, hopefully
yes.
we will get it.
Yes, you're being optimistic. Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, it's moved by Councillor Allen, second by Councillor McGuire. Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program Green Stream Intake 2021. The Council of the Corporation of the Town of Smith Falls approved the water tower construction project as a priority for funding under the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program Green Stream Intake 2021. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And Councillor Dwyer, you have our final motion.
Thank you. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McKenna that Council of the Corporation of the Town of Smith Falls appoint Kristen Storms to the Downtown Business Association for the remainder of the 2018 to 2022 term of council.
Thank you. Discussion, Councillor Dwyer?
Thank you. We always love receiving new volunteers to sit on our boards and committees, and Kristen is a recent addition to the DBA. She just opened the Craft Witch on Russell Street, which if you haven't been to, I highly encourage it. I have already dropped more money than I would like to share with the group, but it's a lovely store, and I wish Kristen nothing but the best in her business endeavors, and hopefully she can bring some more capacity to the DBA board.
Great, thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, I didn't receive the email with the wording, but I'll do my best to replicate Councillor Dwyer's wording here. Moved by Councillor Dwyer, second by Councillor McKenna, that the Corporation of the Town of Smith Falls appoint Kristen Storms to the Downtown Business Association for the balance of 2018-2022 term of council. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Any inquiries or announcements? I see none. Our motion for adjournment is with Councillor Brennan, please.
Thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Allen, that this council adjourns proceedings at 6:06 p.m. and stands so adjourned until the next duly called meeting of council.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Brennan, seconded by Councillor Allen, that this council adjourns proceedings at 6:06 p.m. and stands so adjourned until the next duly called meeting of council. All in favor? We stand adjourned.